Stampers! Thanks for joining me today. Today's project we're going to be learning how to do this really cool lattice background technique and also be doing some watercoloring, adding dimension and depth to your project as well as heat embossing. Super cool! Let's get started. We're going to start by doing our background. For this I'll be using the Stampin Up Sizzix texture plate and some chocolate chip ink and a brayer. So we're going to start by getting some good color on our brayer by roll, lift, roll, lift. See, roll, lift, roll, lift. Very important on the lift. And then we're going to roll it out right onto the texture plate. Put a couple coats on there. Careful not to seesaw. You don't want lines. Remember, roll, lift, roll, lift. We're going to put our paper right on top of that. We're going to put the silicone rubber and then the impressions mat right on top of those two pieces. Now the important thing is the paper part should go through first. There'll be a blank side, you want that to be last, so send your paper through first. Put your sandwich on top of the multi-purpose platform that comes with the Big Shot. Remember, paper first, blank side last, and run it right through your Big Shot machine. And when you lift your paper off, you get the lattice look. Isn't that awesome? So cool. This plastic can just be cleaned by either running it under the sink or using a wet paper towel. This is an 8.5 by 5.5 sheet of Very Vanilla that I'm just going to fold in half for our card base. Use a bone folder for a nice crisp line. And this is 5 inches by 3 3/4, and the brown layer is just 1/8 of an inch bigger than that. And that's going to go on our vanilla, but wait. We'll take a strip of white chocolate chip grosgrain. Use a little snail to attach this around the front. We'll take the mat from the mat pack and the paper piercer and pop 2 holes right on the right hand side, and I'll use our vintage brads. I'll take some of the antique brass for this. Pop those right in the hole and then just spread the backing on them, and then this panel attaches with just a little bit of snail. The next part of our card will be our center panel, and I'm going to start with, this is the Garden from the Heart stamp set. It's in Stampin' Up's Occasion mini catalog. I'll be stamping the hat in Versamark. It's a very well loved Versamark. Bring in our powder pal tray. Pour some black embossing powder right over the top. Now I'm using Stampin' Up's black embossing powder, which is a detail embossing powder. I don't think you would want to use a thick embossing powder for this, because these are very fine lines in there. You want the detail. Pour any excess right back into the jar. I'll take the Stampin' Up heat tool and we'll heat this powder to melt it. Once it's melted, it becomes shiny. I'll be using Stampin' Up's aqua painters. They have just tap water inside, the top screws off, and you can pour it in, and you can squeeze this tube to control the flow of water. They come in a pack of 2, one with a fine tip and one with a thick tip. We'll use both for this project. I am using a lid to one of my old eyelet containers, and I'll be using 4 colors here: Chocolate Chip, Always Artichoke, Blush Blossom, and Going Gray classic ink pad refills. So these were originally intended to re-ink your ink pads, but they also work great for watercoloring. I'll start with the chocolate chip. I just put a couple drops in my lid, and then I'm going to work with my thicker brush. It's a little wet, but I don't want it too wet. You can test it on your scrap paper. See, that's a little bit too wet for me, so I'm just going to wipe off some of the excess wetness. Now I want this hat to look as if there's a light source on it, and I have a light here. So you see the shadow is running this way, so I want it to be darker on the left-hand side. So I'll start over on that side and just work my way towards the right. Now I'm going to wipe off some of that color just to lighten it up a little bit as I move towards the light source. Now I could also have used the StazOn ink instead of embossing this, but the embossing just makes this pop in this particular project. And I'm actually going to leave parts of this hat white, and I'm going to pick up just a little bit more color just to really darken up this edge. Okay, next I'm going to take just a drop of the Always Artichoke. I just need a tiny bit of this for the leaves, and I'll be using the thinner brush for that. Be taking the Blush Blossom and the thinner brush for our ribbons. And here, again, I want to work with the natural shading of the stamp as well as a light source coming at it. So we're going to work with these edges and make them really dark. Now this is a very light color, so I'm really going to reinforce the dark edges. And then wipe a little bit of that color off before blending. You can see how that just brought the hat to life. Watercoloring is just so beautiful. Lastly, I'll be taking some Going Gray just to highlight And what I'm doing now is just going around the edges a little bit, just to wash the edges, and I've picked up a little bit of color from inside the image, and that's okay too. It's a watercolor, so you do have permission to go outside the lines with it. We can actually work that right into the project. So I'll take this and see how that just washes the color. And then I'll wipe off any excess and work with what's on here. You want that to dry and then add a touch of a second layer down below just to add a little bit of depth. And once you're done, you can see, isn't that awesome? It just pops right off at you. Layer that on some chocolate chip and then take some Stampin' Dimensionals and that just pops right on. Wow, so beautiful. Be sure to visit my blog for tons more tutorials and samples. Thanks for joining me today.